everybody. Are we live?
Yep.
We're live. It's the Colbert Connection. We're back.
Part 2.
Yeah.
Doe.
Maybe. Anyway, so you probably didn't hear nothing of what we said, so that means that it probably wasn't for you to hear. Or that it didn't need to be said. One of the two. Except that we beat Web City. We're gonna
abbreviate.
Repeat that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes,
we're going to make sure that got out there. We talked about how sad we were for the loss of Chadwick Boseman.
Yes.
Doing, Wakanda forever. Forever. What a
well,
legacy.
We need to spend a little more time right there.
Okay, because he's a good guy. One would have something negative to say about him.
What could you say?
Yeah, we don't
have something to say about it, which would be Denzel. And if he had anything to say about it, he would say, "You owe me money."
Well, I think Chadwick is definitely able to pay him.
Most definitely.
I think he can recoup the fees for his payment of his tuition to study abroad. I think, and like I said before, in case you didn't hear us, Denzel. That's probably why we blacked out a minute ago, because we said, Denzel, we need you on the show. So here it is again. Come on and be on our show, Colbert Connection. Just hit us up, man. We're ready. Anyway, what's our countdown?
62 days and counting.
62 days before the presidential election.
That's all I got on that.
Okay,
yeah.
Moving on. That's all we're going to say, because it is what it is.
Well, did you catch any of the Republican National Convention?
No.
The highlight of the whole week would have to be Melania's dress.
I did see, beautiful lime green.
It was beautiful.
Beautiful.
So, that was my personal highlight for the whole week.
Okay, well.
I know I saw her previous best friends coming out with a book.
Yes. Not looking to be good.
Well,
it's not looking to be.
Or is it?
Well, I mean, depends on who's reading it.
Well,
some may say, yes, we knew this. Some may say, what?
Let us know.
We'll see. Not going to go buy it, but if the library gets it, I'll get it. Just saying. Okay, moving on.
We're turning this thing up like on speed, fast forward,
we have to condense because we lost some time.
Just a little bit of time, but we want to make sure you have your time with the chief.
Absolutely.
Right? So we're going to speed up our little portion so that you have all the questions you want answered.
But I do have to say, Walmart is coming out with the Plus program. Walmart
What's this?
Plus.
What's this?
You can order groceries, have everything delivered to your house, toys, whatever you can buy at Walmart, except an oil change, I'd imagine, can be delivered to your house for a membership fee. They're Amazon. They're doing like Amazon.
But they cook it too. I'm needy.
I need you to cook.
Things.
I need you to strike up the stove is what I'm going to need you to do. But yes, it's going to be coming. It's already, the 13th, I believe it goes live. And so I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. Because, everybody's starting to just order everything now.
I mean, I've always been a fan
I
of
know you are.
I'm like, convenience. Hit it. Mel's like, you paid $5 extra. I'm like, hit it.
It's like, what in the world?
I'm like, no.
Yes. But I mean, it's a way to save money on trips to Walmart all the time. And you pay that fee, and then you don't have to worry about shipping and all that. It's built in.
Look, understand. There is a Walmart Uber driver at my house, goes 3 times a day. If he didn't get it on his AM shift,
do you hear that,
he will get it at noon, or he will come back and get it at the 3:30 drive by.
Do you hear
so
that, America?
Understand, my house has no want for anything from Walmart.
Man, I mean, Walmart, you should be thanking her. You should be thanking my cousin, because she is keeping y'all.
That's true. No, not me.
Yes. Keeping
Dr. Colbert.
Yes, Dr. Colbert.
Dr. Colbert. Yes.
Yes, but I'm thinking that's pretty cool though.
Yeah, that's cool.
Also, here's some interesting news. The billionaire status report
What is this?
Yeah, something we don't even know about.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be on there, but
Well,
go
I mean,
ahead, tell me about it.
But there's top four, and one person just overtook another. I mean, this is like NASCAR racing. It's like, oh, I got you by about 100 billion. Yeah. So the number one we know, Jeff Bezos, Amazon. He's the number one billionaire with, let me get my numbers here, 200 billion. That's with a B. Bill Gates, 114 billion. And then it was Zuckerberg, but now Elon Musk of Tesla has taken over. And he's the number 3 billionaire in the world at 116 billion.
Tesla.
Yeah, Tesla.
They make a pretty car. They have a pretty SUV. I've been eyeballing it.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful price tag.
But you got to plug them things in, or what?
I mean, there's unlimited energy.
There's some things
Right.
that I just can't get with plugging my car in.
Well,
I don't know.
I mean, it's a status thing. But billionaires, that's stuff billionaires talk about.
You're right. They
But
wouldn't worry
hey,
about
it
that.
could happen. It could happen. Positive thinking. See? Positive thinking. It could happen. But yeah, I had to throw that in because I just thought that was pretty interesting. Billionaire status.
Billionaire.
Mm-hmm. And the airlines
What about them?
dropping the change fees.
What does this mean?
You know how much they used to charge you $200 to change your ticket?
Oh yeah.
Well,
I
they
never tried to change it because I knew it was gonna hurt.
is it
Like, ooh.
$200 and they made over $20 billion off of that
For taxing people.
for saying, "Yep, we're going to charge you $200 to change your ticket."
Understand.
Mm.
I was the traveler always, even when it was
Me
work.
too.
I was like, no. I was that traveler that was like, anybody want this ticket? I'll wait
Yes.
till the next time. Like, how much you offering?
I
That's
did
not
that.
enough yet.
I've done that too.
Many a times. I'm like, I'm in no hurry. It's the weekend. I'm
You got
good.
a free trip? I'm
Yes,
there. I
I
can
am
sit.
good.
I can sit and eat some airport food. But anyway, they're finally dropping that. United, Airline, American, and Delta.
I was looking for some airline tickets the other day, and they're really, really affordable.
Rock
so if you are,
bottom.
or if you're thinking about a trip post-pandemic or a few months out, I would buy it.
Or
ticket.
just brave enough to
you
go
know what?
now.
But that too. But you know what? Buy it because you can change it with no change.
With
fee.
no change fees.
Yep.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
You heard that here.
You wouldn't have known that. You're welcome. Okay, so
Let's talk about Jacob Blake.
man,
Wow.
Kenosha.
Where,
I like
where the
name of
president,
that.
yeah, it has a
Kenosha.
little ring. The president is in Kenosha.
Yes.
And I don't think they wanted him to stop.
The mayor said, or the governor, the mayor or the governor, he said,
Keep it moving.
do a flyby.
Keep it moving.
But he's there.
Interesting.
And I don't know how that's going to go, but you know, hey, we'll find out on the news tonight.
Whew. Kenosha. So much going on in there.
It's a lot. It's
the
a lot.
The whole last time, I think was that last week? Had that just happened last week this time?
Yes.
And we had just a little bit of information. We had just seen the video, and
Yes.
we were like, I don't really know what to think of all that.
Right.
It would be cool to get our visitors' perspective today on the video.
That's
and
going to, yes. And this is the thing, before we bring our guest on, this is the thing that really disturbs me sometimes. That people, people, or the keyboard people, for some reason, think that it's impossible to be pro something, but against something else. People, it is totally possible. You can be that. You can be pro holding somebody accountable and also pro police, pro this, pro that, but against whatever is the wrong part.
So here's the deal.
I'm
with you, Mel. People think that
either
we
or.
we cannot have. You can't hold someone accountable without holding all the other people accountable.
Exactly.
With them. And the thing is
It's
that
just like stereotypes.
definitely we let one bad apple in a bunch
Exactly.
spoil the whole thing, and that we don't want that to happen as
No.
people of color. So why should it happen for the people in blue? Why should it
Absolutely.
happen for any other grouping of people?
Absolutely.
Why?
It is. That's what I'm saying. It's totally possible. You can back the blue. You can like Black Lives Matter. You can like All Lives Matter. You can all of that, and still be, well, that's wrong. Something needs to be done. It's possible, people. Anyway,
Definitely possible.
yes.
So yeah, we just right now are interested to see where things transpire. I know the last update I heard was he's no longer handcuffed or leg cuffed to the hospital bed.
Man.
But this is a plus.
And can't walk.
Which
I'm
is
just
that's
saying.
just kind of like throwing salt in the wound a little bit, isn't it? Like I know you're paralyzed, but I'm gonna go ahead and put this on your leg just cause. Like,
Yeah.
what on earth?
I just, and there's lots of things that we don't understand, of course, not being in the police force and knowing safety precautions and stuff they have to take, which is why we have our guest today, and he's going to enlighten us on some of that
Definitely.
process and stuff. But yeah, I mean, as everyday laymen, we're like, well, yeah, something. Please explain to us, because we definitely don't understand.
Definitely don't
And
understand.
so that's what we have. The Joplin Police Department chief here is going to enlighten us.
A little bit. We're gonna
Yeah.
talk to him in just a quick minute, but I
Yeah.
promised you a Breonna Taylor update.
Absolutely.
And it's been 4 weeks, and I feel like that's been so
Forever.
fast. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was like forever, but so fast. But that was March 13th.
And
That
still,
this happened.
yeah. Give me what's happened.
5 months. Not much.
No.
I don't really have much to update you with
No.
outside of there's been an arrest made,
Hallelujah.
an arrest made.
Mm-hmm.
A few more I think that we're probably waiting on and wanting to see.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, I have to keep you updated another 4 weeks.
Man,
As
it
the
shouldn't take
world
that long.
turns.
Just saying,
As
just
the world
saying.
turns.
Because we just went into her house. She's sleeping. Just going to shoot her in the house. But hey, yeah. That was your update. We'll have
Yeah.
another one for you in 4 weeks.
I wish it was a better update, y'all, but I really don't have any highlights right now.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep our finger on the pulse. How's that?
There we go. Connect you to the world.
Yes. But other than that, we're ready to talk to the chief. Everybody's tired of us. They
They're
want to hear from the
tired.
chief.
We want to hear from the chief. And we are thankful that the chief decided to take some time and come and visit with us. And without further ado,
Absolutely.
we have Joplin Police Department Chief Sloan Roland, who is here to help have a conversation. And people always say, well, this, and this. No, we're going to have a conversation, So welcome, Chief. We are glad to have you. And you are new, Chief.
Just took over in January, the 3rd of January.
Which seems like forever ago
It
in
does,
this
a
new
lifetime,
2020. It's like, yeah, that's like 3 years ago, right? Yeah, or at least 16. I mean, something like that, because 2020 is dragging. It goes by fast, but it's dragging.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's probably even worse for you.
It's been a very interesting run, I can tell you that. It's not a slow day right now.
Yeah. So, and I didn't give a lot of background about the chief. He's got like all these degrees. He's FBI. He's Homeland Security. He's everything. And you can pull up his resume and read all that or his bio. But we're just gonna get right to the discussion because, like we said, we lost y'all earlier. So anyway, Chief. So go ahead and give us some kind of just an intro and about what's going on in the city of Joplin.
A lot of stuff's going on, obviously. Everything going on nationally is
Right.
affecting us, but we're also dealing with the COVID crisis. The pandemic's been going on. That's made a lot of changes for us in how we are actually enforcing the law.
Yeah.
So it's been a very busy time, very busy
Which is good, I guess, in some ways.
in some ways.
Well, how big is the Joplin Police Department? Because I don't know. You might know.
I know.
Your previous,
Yeah.
life, but
Let that go.
Talk to us.
We actually have 110 sworn officers.
Okay.
I have to throw a plug for everybody because we have our own jail and our own dispatch center plus our civilians. So we have about 160 total
Okay.
that work for our department. So it's pretty good size.
Is that normal in a town of 50,000?
It's actually we're a little low on numbers.
Wow.
We should have a few more officers per capita. We're always judged on that 51 to 52,000 that we have for the 2010 census.
Mhm.
But when you look at the daytime population of 250,000,
Yeah, doesn't compare.
Yeah, it doesn't compare at all. So
Okay. Well, a question I have is, I know you guys are working on some different policy updates and things like that. So if you can elaborate on that and how the community may be able to get involved.
Absolutely. One of the things that came out of the discussion we started looking at even back in January and February was engagement. Where are we at as our department? How do we engage the community? Are we doing good? Do we need improvement? So we took a hard reflection, kind of looking inward as to where we were at overall, and made some pretty significant changes. And I think you're going to see some different things coming out of that. We've started putting our policies back online. At one point they were online and they were taken off. For that transparency effect, we wanted to get
Yes.
online where you can actually go and look at our policies. Some of them will be of interest to the community, like use of force, liability, things like that. Some of them are very minuscule on how we do computer operations and stuff, so they may be a little boring and dry. But the goal is within the next year, we have all our policies broke down in sections by the month. So as we approve them and update them, we'll be putting all those online. So within a year, every policy we have in the department will be online.
Oh, nice. That's good.
Some of the other engagement we had, we're actually kind of forming a committee or a coalition, for lack of a better term, to come together as a community to go over some changes we're making, get some ideas, get input, get better feedback. Because a lot of times you think you're doing things right, but until you get that community feedback, you don't really know. And it's awful easy to think everything's going great, and when it's not, and
Right.
we're not meeting the entire community's expectations or needs as a department.
Okay.
So Joplin has been pretty quiet during this time, since post George Floyd, which has been a good thing.
Yeah.
Very much so a
Yes.
good thing. I know there's been quite a few peaceful protests, and the JPD was right there, and they were interactive with those going on. So how do you keep your force at that level? Because I feel like you've kind of put the bar here, and how do we keep them there?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is commend our citizens and the people who live here, because it's a different attitude here. There's a personal responsibility here that you don't see some other places. There's a kindness in when people deal with each other. So the protests have been very peaceful from the fact both sides are working together for the most part. We've kind of set a bar pretty high for our officers for many years. When we talk about accountability, there's several things that have been in place in the Joplin Police Department over the last 20 years that keep us at a certain level of operation, and that's where we're going to maintain that. So we're probably one of the most transparent in the area. You can find out what we do and how we do business, and you're going to see the accountability. You'll see the results of that. We publish our internal affairs reports online, so you can actually go online and see. You won't see an officer's name because they still have that, that protection under the law where you can't read everything that they've ever done, but you're going to see the result of it. You'll see accusation and whether or not it's sustained, and then what the discipline is from that. So I think it gives the community a little bit of accountability to look at us and see that we're doing things right as best we can.
So when you say you can see the records per se of officers, certain officers, how or does Joplin have where before we hire someone, we do that check, like if they're coming from another city and say they've done something unspeakable or whatever, how easily is it for us or for them to get a job with us or anywhere else? What kind of checks do we put in place?
I think if you talk to anybody that actually made it through our hiring process, they'll tell you it's about a 6-month process, and it's not easy. We do a very thorough background. We do a polygraph still. A lot of places don't do that. We do psychological testing, medical testing, all that. But if you've been a police officer before, we're actually going to that department. We're looking at your internal affairs records. We're looking at any lawsuits that may have been filed. I mean, we go in depth, especially if you've been a police officer. And the interesting thing about Missouri is some places don't use it, but they have what we call the bad apple law. And it is a state statute in Missouri that if I come to you and an officer's worked for your department, you have to provide me that information by law, and all I have to do is cite that under statute, and you're required. So we actually go and look at where you've worked before. We have a pretty thorough screening process. At the end of the day, I like to say we still hire humans, and people make mistakes, but we try as best we can to weed those out at the front end so we don't have problems later on. But it's pretty thorough.
So tell me about you said a 6-month process. What type of training is involved in that? I mean, as far as, obviously you have your special tactics and different things like that, but what other type of training do you have to go through to
And let me clarify this, 6 months process just to get you hired.
Oh,
It
okay.
takes almost 6 months a lot of
Okay.
times just to get on the department. We hire people 2 ways, either with the academy, what we call post-certified, they have their Missouri certification, or we hire them and send them to the academy. If we send them to the academy, that's their full-time job for an entire semester. They go to Missouri Southern Police Academy, they're gonna get 600 hours minimum training there, then they come back to us and we do a 6-week in-house. So we kind of have a mini academy in Joplin that we teach them how to do things the Joplin way and what our standards are, what our expectations are for them as an officer.
Mhm.
So they're gonna get liability, they're gonna get what we call social contract or constitutional training, things like that. Then they're gonna go into a 16-week FTO process where they're actually doing the job with a training officer. So by the time they hit the street, they've got about 1,800 hours, man-hours of training just to get to the street. And then of course we do the recertification training every year and specialty training for CIT or crisis intervention training now that we're rolling in. So they get a ton of training. We're one of the highest trained departments in the 4-state area. But there's a lot before you ever actually drive that car alone the first time.
Yeah.
So
I'm impressed. I'm very impressed
Mhm.
because you know everybody's been digging in
Sure,
since you've
sure.
seen you know, and everything's like, oh man, anybody can just be here in the U.S. and that's not the case.
no, that's not the case at all, and that's kind of a common misconception. Anybody can be a police officer. One, it kind of takes a special person to want to do that job to begin with, and with all the public ridicule and things that are going on, a lot of
Mhm.
people shy away from that nowadays. So we're having a very hard time recruiting. We have for the last several years. So, and it's competitive. If you're a young man or woman and you want to be a police officer, it is a very marketable position to be in right now because everybody's looking. So we have a hard time, competing with everybody else in the area and the entire region to get police officers.
So what do we do, or the JPD, what do you do as an organization to actively recruit minorities, people just outside of the mainstream, I guess? What are we doing for that?
We go to local organizations,
Okay.
NAACP and local organizations, but we really had to expand on that because what I can tell you is there's a police academy at Missouri Southern that we
Yes.
recruit out heavily, but you have to realize there's only 25 to 30, 35 max that are in that in any given semester. And we as a department are usually sending anywhere from 4 to 9. So 4 to 9 of those are ours to begin with.
Okay.
So it kind of limits your recruiting pool right off the bat. So we've started using Indeed, some national trade magazines. We actually expanded out where we go down into Oklahoma. We hit the St. Louis area, Pitt State. We're recruiting fairs. We're trying to hit the entire region and get more of a draw from outside this area because we have such a small recruiting pool here. So it's very competitive though. It's money, it's benefits, it's working conditions. So you're competing against everybody in the state at that point.
And that's a hard sell right now, I'm sure.
That is a hard sell because especially when you're recruiting outside the area, you're talking to people into moving here and getting away from family and different things. And you're seeing a little more of what we call a transient officer that will move around for the job. It used to be in the old days when I got into law enforcement, you kind of stayed in your geographical area. But right now with pay and everything the way it is, different places, they'll move around pretty quick. Officers will go where they're making the most money and where they're getting the best benefits. So it's very competitive.
And do you find that more with your younger officers coming in, or because there's such a difference between the younger, they're like, oh, get a job, it's the money, and then go to another one, and then go to and then their older more experienced officers are more like, I'm getting in there, I'm staying in my 20, I'm getting my retirement, and then I'm gonna go and do it again somewhere else, or that kind of thing.
And we do have better luck. We always say if we can keep you 5 to 10 years, we can keep you.
Yeah.
It's that 3 to 5 to
Yeah.
that we start losing officers because they can come to us, they get that experience, get that training, and like I said, we've got a good reputation as a department. We got to do a training program so they can go other places and be picked up pretty easy. So if we can keep them past 5 years, we're doing pretty good, and we hope we can hang on to them forever at that point.
5 is the magic number.
Yeah.
So did you start with your career here in Joplin, or where did you start?
I actually started in Kansas. I did about 15 years across the line over there. Started in a very small town, and then went to a sheriff's department, worked my way up to police chief, and then got hired at, actually took me a while to get to Joplin. I ended up getting deployed. So it knocked me out of getting hired over here. So it took me a while to get over here, but I finally got over here in 2003, and I've been here ever since.
Doing a fine job, I must say.
Well, thank
Doing
you.
a
I
fine
appreciate
job.
that.
So I had a question. We had a question that came early, and so I want to ask you this, and I want to make sure I get it right. So with what additional training, okay, here's a scenario. Someone's driving, and we'll just because we're going to say a black male, driving, and they get pulled over for whatever reason. They're already in a heightened, in this climate, a fearful state. And if the officer is also in a heightened, fearful state, as officers, they can be, but especially in this climate, you guys are having the training, so how do you de-escalate that situation? How do you keep that from becoming a deadly situation?
We teach different types of de-escalation in our defensive tactics, and it's kind of woven into our scenario training through our in-house academy. So they get it several times from different angles. When we do force-on-force training, we just keep building that back in so they constantly see it. We also try to explain to have that, you have empathy for understanding on why at 3 o'clock in the morning when you pull somebody over, you either may get fear, somebody's shaking, they're scared to death, or you get that aggressive response of why did you pull me over, and the upset. So teaching them to try to understand, because like you said, at 3 o'clock in the morning when they're approaching that car and their tension's already up and their stress is up, and you get that on the other side, that could be a deadly situation. So we try to teach them to recognize that, how to de-escalate the situation, how to have those conversations, because I don't want to be insulting with all the young people, but a lot of the communication nowadays by text.
Right.
And whereas, in the old days you talk to people a lot, they don't do that as much. So you have to, that's a skill, and it's a perishable skill. And we have to try to teach that on, words that will upset people, words that will calm people. So we do some tactical communication training, but we focus pretty heavy on that de-escalation right off the bat. What are you recognizing? You may mistake this guy for thinking he's hiding drugs or has a weapon in the car when he's nervous because of what he thinks is going to happen on that car stop. So you've got to kind of try to train that into people.
Okay.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't been pulled over in a very, very, very long time. I mean, we're talking like 10, 12
Yeah.
years. And if I were to get pulled over these days, just because of, like you say, the climate, I would probably just pass on out. But, I just, and someone said, well, you ever been put in a cop car? I'm like, absolutely not. I would definitely just die before I got that far. So, but I mean, there's people that definitely, like you say, you walk up to the car and they just automatically go into that mode. And I feel like that's where I would be, just in that nervous, knowing nothing wrong, but just in the climate that we're in.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that moment.
And you hear so much is that the officers feared for their life. Well, we fear for our lives. I mean, and I'm not making light of that. We're laughing now, but it's like it's true, because and we're not saying all police are bad. We're not saying and here or that kind of thing. It's just it's a heightened state right now.
It is, absolutely.
And we need to figure out a way to actively involve the police in the community. You know what I mean? And I know it has been brought up before. It's not policing the community, but interacting and engaging with the community.
Well, and I think you were in a meeting with me here a while back where that comment was made that struck home. You guys do a great job. I feel like you're there when you need to be there, but I feel policed and not necessarily protected.
Yes.
And that kind of hit home to me. And I went back and talked to my command staff about that, because I'm like, hey, this is a comment that was made, and this concerns me if this is the perception. At the end of the day, my goal is that every single citizen in this town thinks we're their police department.
Absolutely.
And they take a certain amount of pride in saying that, and know that we're going to hold ourselves accountable, and we're a little different than some places. That it's different in Joplin.
Right.
When I'll quote Sergio Rizzo. It is different here.
Yeah.
We have we have a different attitude and a different outlook on things. So that's what we would like, is that pride of that's our police department. We don't have those problems here. And I'm hoping to get there someday. We've got work to do.
We got work to do. We've got work to do. But we're doing the work. There's a beginning for everything, And that's the kind of thing that I think people are looking for. It's like, what are you doing? And let those steps be known, you know?
And that's, I think you're absolutely right. A lot of times we don't tell our story well.
Yes.
We're doing these things, but for years we're like, we're holding ourselves to this national standard, we're doing this. We didn't tell the public that.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the things that shocked me is when they said, you know, Joplin does chokeholds, and I'm like, we outlawed chokeholds like 20 years ago.
Wow.
That's not been in our policy. You know, we haven't done anything like that in at least 20 years, but the perception's there. So
Yeah.
that tells me we're not doing a good enough job of selling our story.
Right.
So you're seeing things like, we started a Traffic Tip Tuesday, what causes accidents. We started Did You Know on our Facebook page, just explaining different parts of our department. We talked about putting those policies online where you can actually go read the policy for yourself.
Yes.
And if you have questions, you can ask us about those policies. But, you know, expanding our Citizens Advisory Committee where we've got more members and we can get more citizens input. And then having those community coalition meetings. You know, we go talk to anybody that wants to talk to us is kind of my goal right now. So I think that interaction is critical. It's hard to complain about something if you're sitting across the table and you guys have asked all the questions and we've answered those questions honestly. And the other side of that is when we admit when we make mistakes.
I love that.
You know, that we step forward and say, hey,
Yes.
this was a mistake, and we take ownership of that.
That's
So.
a good thing. And that's something that even brings you on the human level. I mean, because sometimes, you know, we know officers are seen as like they're just enforcers, you
Right.
know, or that kind of thing. But when you say that, a lot of people just need to hear that, you know, that everything is not just us against them or this, you know, it's not that way.
Well, it's awful easy as a police officer getting that mentality because you deal with about 1 to 2% of the population. And usually the people you're dealing with a lot of times are not the nicest people in the world, so you can get that mindset after a few years.
Yeah.
So we have to break that cycle that you're missing the 98% of the good people that are out there that you're not dealing with every day, you know, that still support you, that have good attitudes and are good people in this town. So you constantly got to reinforce that too on the other side.
Well, and that goes both ways for, you know, it's just like we said earlier, it's not us against you guys. You know, it's not. It is not that for everybody watching. It is not one or the other. It is, let's all work together for a solution, you know? And let's be proactive. What can we do proactively?
Right, and I think, you know, you always hear about the, you know, wall of silence and all that. That's a misconception a lot of times, I think, you know, if you look at our department, the complaints that are internally, and we talked about this before, there are more internal complaints generated than there is external. So that's us holding ourselves accountable or another officer going, hey, I watched this and this wasn't right. So, you know, a lot of times that's a fallacy. Does it occur in departments? Absolutely. We're not seeing that here. We take responsibility for that. But, you know, along with that, I think the citizens need to understand that we're trying to do the right thing every day. And we got a great bunch of men and women out there that are, you know, they're risking their lives. They're in the neighborhoods every day and night. And when you call, we're going to be there.
Absolutely.
So a couple of questions. First of all, how many females are on your staff?
We have about 9 right now.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I'm losing one. She's moving, so I hate that. But we're going to lose one. But we'll need to get her replaced with it. But we have about 9 right now.
9. Okay.
Not Lacey, I
No, no.
know. Oh, okay, I was like, no. She's like the best.
And then my next question is,
And she needs to promote if she's watching this.
Oh,
Lacey
Lacey,
needs to
There you
we
go.
need
test
you
for
to
corporate.
promote.
There you go.
Test for corporal. Yes.
look at that. That's the push.
Stand up for the
That's
women.
push.
Come on,
yes.
Lacey. We're behind you.
If you could give us like your top 3 calls that you get in this area, like what kind of complaints or what kind of calls?
You know,
most popular?
right now we're dealing with, number-wise, it's going to be accidents and things like that. The top 3 that are kind of concerning me right now is we're having a lot of overdoses. We're seeing an influx of fentanyl and heroin in this area. When I took over as chief and I was actually interviewing, that's one of the things I brought up is we've got to address the fentanyl and heroin issue right now. We have kind of a false sense of security because you get Narcan over the counter now, so some people are less worried about overdosing, which is good and bad that the drug's there to save them, but also it gives them a kind of false sense of security. So I think that's one of the things we need to deal with. Homeless calls are on the rise. Our homeless population is kind of off the chart right now, and we're struggling to kind of deal with that. So that's one of the things, and property crime right now. We're kind of seeing a lot of property crime. The good thing was during COVID, when everybody was at home, it kind of slacked off because everybody was home watching their property and they were reporting things. And you're seeing some of that climb back up now. Obviously, violent crime always worries us, you know, but we don't have a lot of violent crime, thank God, in Joplin. We're very blessed with that. We're not seeing a whole lot of rise in that. But those three probably are the ones that concern me, because those are a lot of the quality of life issues too that we deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, those things. And the homeless, my goodness, they're on every block almost now, you know. And I know when I was on council, and there, you know, we thought about the ordinance for that, and it's like you can't, because you're violating their rights, you know, to stand there and to peacefully assembly, I guess.
Right.
So
And
it's like,
finding that balance between enforcement and compassion,
yeah,
you know, it is always a challenge, because you don't want to go overboard in one direction or the other, because you've still got to maintain public peace, but you got to make sure you're not, you know, doing things that can be construed as harsh.
absolutely.
So.
It's a delicate balance you guys have to walk, you know, in a lot of areas.
It is. It's a challenge, and more so now because, you know, when I started years and years ago, I started as a police officer in 1987, and we didn't have all the requirements now. We didn't deal a lot with mental patients and things like that. There wasn't as many on the street. Drugs were a different era in the drug scene than what it is now. So there's a lot more challenges. I'll tell anybody that listens today, it's 10 times harder to be a police officer now than when I started.
Wow.
It wasn't a real hard job back then. It's evolved. It's definitely evolved.
So with the passage of the marijuana dispensaries, and how is that faring for traffic stops, or what can they, since it's legal, you know, if you have your little card or whatever, it's legal, but can you operate a vehicle? Can you, what's some insight on that?
There's a lot of challenges with enforcement on that, because obviously you still can't drive impaired even if it's under the influence of marijuana. So it's still a crime if you're driving after smoking marijuana. The problem is finding how much and testing for that and everything. So that's going to be a challenge for us. States that went to that have seen a rise in marijuana-related accidents and fatalities. So we kind of are worried about that. It does make it difficult enforcement-wise, because now you can have a possession, you know, of a certain amount of marijuana, and who has the card in the car when 3 people are in the car, and whose marijuana is it? It's kind of a slippery slope at times. So it's enforcement's been very interesting.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, how's its packaged, you know, how's it packaged and everything else, and where'd it come from, and it's a challenge, right?
Okay.
And,
I wondered about that. Well, and I guess, and this is more for like the court system, I guess, because before it was so many people being put in jail for marijuana, you know, and it's small traces amounts and things like that. But now it's like, hey, it's a moneymaker. So, and you still have people serving time for it, you know.
And you're seeing some of that bail reform and Senate Bill 5 and some of the things that came out. We're seeing some effects on that. Some good, some bad. You know, we're also dealing with a lot more people out on the street after being arrested rather quickly. So, you know, your crime numbers are going to go up from that too, because they're not being held. Now, the good thing is you're not seeing indigent people that have no way of paying being held too. So it's another balance issue that the state's trying to find right now.
Everything's a balance. Yeah. I mean, it's just, there's no one answer. There's no one answer that we can.
Lots of gray.
Yeah.
There are lots of shades of gray. You know, because on one hand you have, well, we've got a law and order, but on another hand, well, can't people live? And another, you know, and it's just, the whole realm of it is murky.
Yeah, and, you know, even with COVID, law enforcement is being forced into areas, with mask ordinances and different things that we've never been in before. So there's some pretty murky waters we've been swimming through in the last few months.
Have y'all had many calls for that?
I think we had 45 total that were complaints mainly against businesses.
Oh my
so,
God. come to my restaurant.
So that would be consumer about the retail.
Yes, somebody
Okay.
not wearing a mask in
Right.
there, the business not requiring a mask. So we had about 45 of those while it was in effect. I think we did like 21 reports, but we only ended up doing, most of the time we'd go and it'd be taken care of. An
Yeah.
officer would talk to them, say, hey, here's the ordinance, here's how it reads, and we give them a copy of it, and they were pretty compliant. So we didn't have a lot of pushback.
So now that it's not an ordinance anymore, is it just pretty much died down to nothing?
It has died down. There's still people upset,
Yeah.
so they want.
Oh, we see.
And yeah, you've seen it in the protests and the
Yeah.
online comments. We jokingly say everybody's looking for a cause right now, one direction or another, and we lost some of that civil discourse to where we can sit down and talk things out, like you were talking about earlier.
So before we did you have a question?
No, you
first?
go right ahead.
Before we close out, because a lot of people don't know, some of us do know, can you give a breakdown, real quick, of the gun laws in Missouri as far as open carry, permits, all that?
A few years back, as you know, Missouri kind of went wide open, we'll say, with their carry.
Wild, Wild West.
Basically, you can open carry anywhere except government buildings or where it's not posted, but in public you can open carry now. And unless the business specifically posted or tells you can't, you can open carry. So you'll see people in retail stores and stuff open carrying. You can carry concealed now without a concealed carry permit in Missouri as long as you can legally carry and you can have that gun concealed. So it changed a lot of the laws and the perception of those laws. Why I'm a big constitutionalist, you know that. I just wish that people get training, along with that. It's fine to carry a weapon for your personal protection, but make sure you know how to use it and you're carrying it, in a safe manner. So.
And I say that because nationally, we're seeing people walking around with guns and rifles and AK-15, 40 cent, whatever the number is. and it's like, okay, well, we know in Missouri that's your you can do that openly, and so you see somebody walking with a rifle, a gun, or whatever.
We've actually had to do a lot of specific training on that for officers because that was something new, having somebody carry a rifle down Main Street or Third Thursday or something like that. So we had to do some training on that because officers weren't used to that. When that started happening, they weren't used to that, and obviously that ramps things up a little bit. And in protester crowds, that also ramps things up. So it's at times a recipe for disaster if it's not done responsibly, I guess you'd say. So you have to be very careful with that. But it limits what we can and can't do also. But anytime even when we go into a situation with a gun, you're bringing a gun into a fight. So at least one on your side, so it makes the situation dangerous.
That fine line between people's constitutional right to have it and the state right, and it's a fine line.
And we're in the 4 states, and every state does not have the same laws, which
Right.
makes it weird too.
The thing you do have to be careful on it is traveling, like you're talking about, because some places don't recognize Missouri's laws. If you go into Illinois or some of the other, you can get into trouble if you're carrying concealed on your person without a carry concealed permit. Some of those states are not reciprocal, so you have to be kind of cautious in where you go and know what the laws are.
So it's best to get a permit if you plan on traveling.
Yeah, if you're wanting a reciprocal, it's best to get a concealed carry.
Okay.
We thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good talking to you.
That's good information you put out. I hope everybody was paying attention, and if you have more questions, you can send them to us, and we'll make sure the chief gets them, and we will get answers for you.
Yeah, this is the people's chief.
This is the
I'm just gonna claim
people's
him
chief.
as the
Yeah.
people's chief.
Joplin People's Department Chief. We done gave him a whole new name.
A whole new name.
But thank him for joining us, though. So, next week,
Next week, Dr. Moss will be in the house with us.
the superintendent of Joplin Schools.
Yes, I know y'all have questions.
Questions.
What do you really want to know about pandemic schooling, shall we
Yeah.
call it? 2020.
Yes, because you go, or you don't
And you don't go.
But
And
then
then
you go.
But then we ain't going no more.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're just, inquiring minds want to know. And I have a little one that's in the school system, and
She go like Monday, Wednesday, Friday,
1 week.
and then Tuesday, Thursday the next.
She's actually liking it. She just doesn't get to see all of her friends with the same,
Oh, yeah,
the
'cause you
later,
wouldn't see the other-
with
That
the
would be
later
so
initials for their
weird.
last name. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, they get to basically have a day off.
A day? Look, I'm like that week where I only went 2 times.
She's excited.
I would get all my homework done
I'm
on
just
Tuesdays
saying,
and
that's-
Thursdays.
No, she doesn't. She has already figured that out.
We could have a job on those. Hey,
She has figured it out.
Hey,
and
y'all
she's
have to-
excited. 'Cause
Yeah.
this weekend is Labor
the
Day
long-
weekend.
and she got a long weekend.
She ain't gotta go back to
But
school
see,
till
but-
Tuesday,
But the-
Wednesday.
But wait, the kids that have to go on Tuesday, Thursday, they get cheated.
Sorry for them.
Oh man.
It rolls around eventually, like after New Year's or something, Christmas.
And then
It switches off.
what you mean? They get the next holiday?
It's like each of them will get 2 like that, maybe.
We're gonna have to discuss this.
Yes,
'Cause
we
we're
will
gonna have to
ask
come up with a
Dr.
better
Moss.
route because
Yeah.
that's not gonna work for me.
But please join us next week when we talk with Dr. Melinda Moss of the Joplin School System. She is the superintendent. Thank you for working with us through our technical difficulties.
But you know what? Our great team, they took great care of us during that, and we want to make sure that we thank our
Josh and Jessica.
yes, and our announcer and our
Kelly.
talent recruiter or
Casting director is what it's called.
Yes,
Big
Sly.
Yes.
We got to thank him because he keeps the people coming.
Keeps them coming. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week.